All right, guys, what's up? Here to expand on what Mr. Kleiner just got done talking about. So here are some of the terms of the Indian Removal Act. One of the first major things that happened is this court case called Worcester versus Georgia. It happened in 1832. Basically, a group of Native Americans challenged Georgia's law that said that the Cherokee Nation, the Cherokee tribe, needed to move out of their land. That way, Georgia and the United States could take advantage of the gold that they had found in Georgia. The Native Americans took and challenged this law, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court actually sided with the Native Americans and said, you know what, the Native Americans are their own individual nation. We have no, as the United States, we have no jurisdiction, no power to tell them to leave their land. This is a major, major, major deal for Cherokee Nation. Now they feel like, hey, you know what, we can stay. Cherokee Nation had bent over backwards, as Mr. Kleiner said in the previous slides, to do everything they possibly could do to stay on their land. They adopted Western culture. The gentleman on the previous slide was rocking the Mr. Kleiner, Mr. Barber haircut. They really did everything they could to make sure that they looked as white as possible, to put it bluntly. And still, Georgia and Andrew Jackson were coming after them. So the fact that the Supreme Court sided with them, they thought, this is it. We're good now, right? No. Andrew Jackson basically he ignores the Supreme Court, which is super illegal. All right? And I cannot stress how bad of a look this is now in retrospect, looking back, the fact that a president ignored the highest law of the land. What the Supreme Court says goes. A president can try to do whatever he and hopefully one day she wants, but if the Supreme Court says what they're doing is illegal, it's done. The Supreme Court said what Jackson and Georgia was doing was illegal, and Jackson did it anyway. And back then, Americans were kind of down for it because we wanted some gold and we wanted that green and we wanted more land. Like, it just was what it was. But again, now in 2021, and it didn't take us this long to look back and think like, yo, why are we celebrating this guy on the $20 bill if what he did was so wrong? Again, the act said, so that now that the Supreme Court case is done, the Indian Removal Act said that they got to remove the Native Americans peacefully. That still didn't happen. America just kept really getting more and more violent with them. This quote at the bottom on the left-hand side is really telling about how Andrew Jackson wanted to deal with the Native Americans. He said, light a fire under them, and when it gets hot enough, they'll move. Basically saying we're going to make them feel so uncomfortable, so unwanted, that they're not going to want to stay regardless. So we might not literally pick them up and move them, but they're going to know, Native Americans are going to know how much America hates them, and eventually they're going to want to move. And like Kleiner said, there's no land west enough to where the United States eventually wouldn't happen upon them again and make them move again. And then they'd move again and we'd happen upon them again and make them move again. It was just going to be a never-ending cycle. And Native Americans, really, they knew that. Now, most of America was down with moving the Native Americans, but not all Americans really supported this. And again, why didn't they support it? Number one, the dislike for Jackson. And he was a very popular president back in the day, but there were still a lot of people that did not like the fact that he did not handle himself in a very presidential manner. Again, a smaller portion of the United States just didn't support Jackson, so they were going to really not like anything he did. And they really saw how wrong this was in general. They saw the cruelty. And we're going to really get into that word, the cruelty that happened in this removal of the Native Americans from their native land in the next lesson, in the activity that we got, where we show you lots of pictures, lots of quotes. So you guys can see really one of the 2 or 3 worst things that's ever happened in the United States. This is definitely one of them, and it's a major stain on America. Is a great country, but we can look back on this now and say, like, man, we look really bad here, and there's no way of sugarcoating it any other way. And one of the major reasons that people really disliked the Indian Removal Act was religion, specifically the Quakers. The Quakers are like this uber religious group that some of you guys might remember back from our colonies, from our colonies lesson back in like August, September. In Pennsylvania, I remember William Penn, the oatmeal guy. Him and his group were super religious, and they looked at it and said, like, this is not what God would want us to do. This is not biblical. And even if you weren't a Quaker, anybody that was, relatively religious would probably look at this and say like, we probably shouldn't be doing this, especially when when your end goal is just money and land. That's not a good enough reason to remove all of these older people, all of these, people that are doing their best to make sure that they're assimilating, that there's that word again, to American culture. So we got 2 discussion questions on this slide as well. You got question number 4. Look at Jackson's quote above, right above the question that you're seeing there now. What do you think that he meant when he said this to the soldiers that were trying to get tribes to move out quickly? So again, reiterating that same quote, I'll read it again. Light a fire under them, and when it gets hot enough, they'll move. What is he trying to accomplish here? And question 5, why do you think so many Americans supported the Indian Removal Act? We did talk about the Quakers who didn't support it, but why would people support this knowing how wrong it was? Everybody knew it was wrong kind of ethically and morally, but most Americans still supported it. Why do you think that is? Let us know.